Good morning and welcome to this edition of Monday Morning Mobility. I'm Jeff Blanchard and I'm back to share a little bit of knowledge with you to be able to help you better deal with maybe some pain you're having or to help you be able to stay more active and fit. So I wanted to talk to you today a little bit about how you can help your rotator cuff. So the rotator cuff, anytime I bring up the rotator cuff with patients, they'll come in with pain and we'll go through an exam and we can typically tell pretty quickly that their pain is coming from the rotator cuff. And when I say that word, oftentimes they'll kind of make this little groan. Oh no, not the rotator cuff. That means I'm going to have surgery. That's actually not correct. So I would go as far as to say that all of us will have rotator cuff pain sometime in our lives. It's just a common area for there to be wear and tear, and it's in a position where you use that a lot. And the research shows that if you're in your 50s, about 50% of the people in their 50s have some kind of a tear in the rotator cuff. About 60% of the people in their 60s have a tear in the rotator cuff, and on. But the interesting thing is also that just because there's a tear, it doesn't mean that there's going to be pain. So many of these individuals are walking around and they have maybe some kind of a tear in the rotator cuff, but they aren't having any pain. On the flip side, you can have shoulder pain and not have any tear. So it really comes down to the important thing is we do an appropriate assessment to be able to determine, is there a tear, is there not? If there is, how bad is it? And do we really need to worry about something as drastic as surgery? There are a few of the cases where people tear the rotator cuff and they do need to have surgery. Usually these individuals have a pretty severe injury. They're usually a little younger, and there's a large enough tear, but healthy enough tissue where the surgeon can get a good repair in the rotator cuff. Typically by the time people get past their 50s, the tissue of the rotator cuff isn't as viable, so it's harder for the surgeon to get a really good repair in the rotator cuff. So we start trying to look for other options. What are some things we can do? Oftentimes we can do physical therapy and strengthen the shoulder and improve mobility and even decrease and eliminate pain, even in the presence of a rotator cuff tear. So again, the question that I want to talk about is, how do I help my rotator cuff? So let's say you end up having pain in a typical rotator cuff area. That area would be right through here somewhere. And so maybe you come in to see us and you ask us, what can I do to help my rotator cuff? So let's take a look at what the rotator cuff is and what it looks like. I wanted to show you my rotator cuff model. So this is looking at the shoulder from the front, and of course this is looking at the shoulder from the back. As you can see, there is bone. So there's the shoulder blade. This is the collarbone here, or the clavicle, and here is your humerus. There's the ball, there's the socket. And the rotator cuff is what you see on the shoulder blade. So we've got this muscle here on top, these in the back, and this one in the front. So the front side, this is a larger muscle, this is your subscapularis. And then on the back side, this top one, this is the most common that people tear. This is the supraspinatus. This is the tendon that I'll oftentimes tear. And then we have your infraspinatus and your teres minor. So those four muscles and tendons together make up the rotator cuff. So the rotator cuff helps you be able to move this bone. Okay, so it's attached to the humerus, and it helps to be able to move the humerus in the proper way, and so you can raise your arm up. Oftentimes with a tear, I see something like this. This is what you're trying to do to raise the arm up. Other muscles jump in to try to help out because the rotator cuff is not able to do its job. And a tear is not quite like tearing a piece of paper. It's more like taking the tissue and puncturing through the tissue. So you can see a window right through the tendon. So we talk about, well, there's a partial tear, or there's a complete or full thickness tear. Partial thickness tear is you can't see through the tendon, it's only partially torn, so I still just see tendon. There's a partial tear, but it doesn't go all the way through. A full thickness tear is the tear goes all the way through the tendon, so I can see right through the tendon. That would be a full thickness tear. If the tear is even larger than that, then the tendon completely can come apart. And so the muscle and the tendon go opposite directions. Obviously, the more drastic the tear, the more challenging it is. But we have been able to work well with people, no surgery, and they have a full thickness tear and they do very well. So we're going to move out into my gym area where I can show you a couple of exercises that you can do to help your rotator cuff. So I'm going to show you a few exercises that you can do in order to strengthen your rotator cuff. I do want to let you know that if these exercises, if you try them and they increase your pain, that it's best to not do these exercises. So just because I'm saying that these are good for your rotator cuff has to be ready to be able to do these 3 exercises that I'm going to show you. So you need a band, a door anchor works really well, and a little rolled up towel. So the door anchor allows you to close your band in a door. So you can close the door on your on the anchor and not pinch your band. Bands eventually will just tear, and then your band is all done. These things don't ever tear. So I loop my band through the door anchor, and I like to make my handles about the same length. And then you can just cinch that down on your door anchor, and then you would close this in your door. I'm going to go ahead and attach it to my little spot here that I use because this is a little bit more convenient for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by taking my band and my towel is going to be underneath my arm, and I'm going to start in this position. Hopefully I'm still centered here. So I'm going to start from here, and then I'm going to rotate my arm that direction because the rotator cuff rotates the arm. And so I'm rotating out, and then I'm rotating back in. Notice that I'm moving fairly slowly, which is what you want to do. My hand goes a little bit up as I go to the side, and then it comes right back down to my center as I come back. And this should be comfortable. This should just feel like you're doing a little bit of work. So with this motion, you're working one side of the rotator cuff. And then what I'll do is I will turn myself around and go the opposite direction. So just so I don't turn my back to you, I will demonstrate with my other side. So I'm going to take now this side, crank up on my band a little bit, starting from out here, and I'm going to pull to the inside and then back out. This is the opposite motion that I was doing before. And so I'm hitting the other side of the rotator cuff. So in this way, we start to strengthen typically the parts of the rotator cuff that can work well to help better center the ball and socket. The last exercise. Again, with your door anchor, you're going to want to close your door anchor above you, and so your band is hanging down. So I'm going to just anchor this at my little spot above. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with my band in the front of my body with 2 hands, and I'm going to pull my band to my sides. So in doing this, you want to try to use the muscles where your shoulder blades are. You're trying to bring your shoulder blades back and get into kind of like you're standing at attention if you're in the military. So standing at attention, bringing your arms to your sides, and then back up to your start point, and then back here to your sides. So those 3 exercises specifically work the front part, the back part of the rotator cuff, and also hit some of those muscles that help to correct your posture and improve your shoulder blade position, which in turn helps to take some of the pressure off of your rotator cuff so your shoulder is able to work better. I hope that, that this information has been helpful, that a few of these exercises have been helpful. Of course, if you do have shoulder symptoms, please reach out, contact your physical therapist, come in and see us. We'll be able to help you know for sure if this is a rotator cuff problem or not, and be able to better guide you on the path to recovery. So thank you for joining me for this Monday morning mobility. If you found that this was helpful, please share this with somebody else and leave us a review. And until next time, remember, motion is lotion.